In central Greece, where the plain of Thessaly ends, gigantic rocks rise, creating a spectacle found nowhere else in the world. The monasteries of Meteora, built upon these rocks, offer one of the world's most spectacular sacred sites. Meteora captures the imagination on so many levels: natural, religious, and cultural. In this place, geological formations have amalgamated with humankind's spiritual quest for many centuries. In a region of almost inaccessible sandstone peaks, Orthodox monks settled on these columns in the sky from the 11th century onwards. To the west and north of Meteora rises the imposing Pindos mountain range, while to the east and south, the endless valley of Thessaly stretches off to the horizon. According to geologists, this valley was once an enormous lake that was emptied into the Aegean in one cataclysmic moment when the natural levee collapsed around modern-day Tempe, leaving behind a fertile and relatively flat land. At the western edge of this lake, near the Pindos Mountains, a number of streams formed a delta right on the site of present-day Meteora as they emptied their waters into the lake. The conglomerate was formed over thousands of years of stone, sand, and mud deposits at the edge of the lake. Spectacularly perched atop rocky pinnacles, the Meteora monasteries are among the most striking sights in Greece. The name Meteora is Greek for suspended in the air, which perfectly describes these 6 remarkable Greek Orthodox monasteries. The sandstone peaks were first inhabited by Byzantine hermits in the 11th century, who climbed the rocks to be alone with God. The present monasteries were built in the 14th and 15th centuries, during a time of instability and revival of the hermit ideal. Founded in the 16th century, the easily accessible Rusanu Monastery occupies a lower rock than the others of the Meteora. The Rusanu Monastery stands on a low rock. The monastery covers the entire surface of the rock and consists of 3 levels. The church and cells occupy the ground floor, while the 2 upper floors house the guest quarters, reception halls, an exhibition room, and more cells. The holy monastery of St. Nicholas Anapausus was built in the 16th century by Dionysius. The monastery of the Holy Trinity, founded by the monk Domitius in the 15th century, is probably the most dramatically positioned of the Meteora monasteries. Perched atop a slender pinnacle and accessible only by 140 steep steps, its isolated position makes it one of the most peaceful monasteries as well. The courtyard displays old farm implements and a winch once used for hauling up baskets. A funicular now carries supplies to the top, as well as inspirational quotes from 1 Corinthians 13, such as "Love is patient." The monastic buildings are attractively half-timbered. Founded in the 14th century by a monk from Mount Athos, the Great Meteoran, or Monastery of the Transfiguration of Christ, is the highest, largest, and oldest of the 6 monasteries of the Meteora. Platis Litos, or Broad Rock, the rock on which the Great Meteoran stands, rises over 615 meters above sea level. The original hermitage of St. Athanasius Meteorites, a simple building carved into the rock, can be seen on the left of the staircase leading to the monastery entrance. Founded by Athanasius the Meteorite, one of the most well-known figures in Orthodox monasticism, work was begun before 1382 and later completed by the monk Joseph. After the Serbian Emperor Simeon Uros bequeathed his wealth to the monastery and became a monk, it became the richest and most powerful of all the monasteries. The holy monastery Varlam in the Meteora is named for the monk who first built a tiny chapel on this rocky promontory in the 14th century. Its elegant church is adorned with 16th century frescoes. Today, the monastery of Varlam is occupied by 7 monks. It can be accessed by a narrow bridge that runs from the main road and a series of 195 stairs. In 1350, an ascetic monk named Varlam climbed this great rock and settled at the top. He built 3 churches, a cell for himself, and a water tank. No one chose to follow his lead, so after his death the site was abandoned. The buildings fell into ruin for almost 200 years, until 1517, when two rich priest-monks, Theophanes and Nectaris Apsarides from Ioannina, ascended the rock and founded a monastery. The fathers of the Meteora did not set out to create a civilization on the inhospitable rocks. Rather, the civilization grew as a natural consequence of their love of God. Thus, their hard work, self-sacrifice, spirituality, and aesthetics have endowed the monasteries of the Meteora with exceptional architectonic beauty, masterly frescoes, splendid gold embroideries, and other artistic treasures. The monasteries of the Meteora also made important contributions in terms of education. During the years of Turkish domination and afterwards, the fathers of the Meteora founded religious educational schools with their own money. The monastery houses an important collection of relics, intricately carved wooden crosses, icons, and other ecclesiastical treasures. It also has frescoes by the post-Byzantine iconographer Frangos Catalanos. The tower contains the old windlass and rope basket from the early 16th century, which used to transport monks and supplies to the monastery. When asked how often the rope was replaced, a 19th century abbot famously replied, "Only when it breaks." War proved the greatest and perhaps the only major threat to the survival of the holy monasteries of the Meteora. This sanctuary became particularly useful when Turkish expansion began to threaten the Byzantine Empire. As the Turks advanced onto the Thessaly plain during the 14th century, more monasteries were built by hermit monks. During the Turkish occupation, it was the monasteries which kept Hellenic culture and traditions alive. They were not only religious institutions, but academic and artistic centers as well. It is believed that were it not for the monasteries, Hellenic culture would have disappeared, and modern Greece would be a reflection of the Ottoman Empire, with little knowledge of its roots and history. The monasteries attracted not only the deeply religious, but Greece's philosophers, poets, painters, and intellectuals. The only monastery in the Meteora visible from Kalampaka, the monastery of St. Stephen, is now home to a convent of nuns. Although less spectacular than the others, it is the most accessible of the monasteries. Moni Agiou Stefanou was founded in around 1400 by Saint Antoninus Cantacuzene, who is thought to be a son of the Serb ruler Nicephorus II of Epirus. The monastery suffered much damage in the 20th century, having survived bombing during World War II. The first people to inhabit Meteora were hermits, who lived in hollows and fissures in the rock towers, some of which reached 550 meters in elevation above the plain. This great height, combined with the sheerness of the cliff walls, kept away all but the most determined visitors. Initially, the hermits led a life of solitude, meeting only on Sundays and holy days to worship and pray in a chapel built at the foot of a rock known as Dupiani. In the cavities, fissures, and peaks of the rocks, local people found protection from the raids of the various conquerors and armies that passed through the area. A few courageous hermits and anchorites found shelter in these rocks, seeking mental serenity and Christian perfection through prayer. The hermits were initially isolated, praying in small chapels called prosehadia, a Greek word simply meaning places of prayer, seeking their own salvation and that of all peoples. Their life was simple, and the work laborious. Exactly when the rocks began to be inhabited is not known, since existing documents date from the period when the monasteries were already organized. According to experts, the first hermits must have taken refuge in the rocks sometime around the end of the first millennium. The Meteora provide an outstanding example of the types of monastic construction which illustrate a significant stage of history, that of the 14th and 15th centuries, when the Hermetic ideals of early Christianity were restored to a place of honor by monastic communities in the Greek Orthodox Church. Suspended in the air, these monasteries represent a unique artistic achievement and are one of the most forceful examples of the architectural transformation of an existing site into a place of retreat, meditation, and prayer. Built under impossible conditions, with no practicable roads, permanent precarious human habitations subsist to this day in the Meteora, but have become vulnerable under the impact of time. The net in which intrepid pilgrims were hoisted vertically to reach the monasteries dominates the valley and symbolizes the fragility of a traditional way of life that is threatened with extinction. The city of Kalampaka is built at the feet of the Meteora, on the left side of the river Pinos, at the point where it enters the plain of Thessaly. Kalampaka serves as a starting point for those visitors who wish to explore the monuments and magnificent sites of the region, including Aspropotamos of Hasia, Kosiakas, and especially the Meteora. The ancient name of Kalampaka, Eginio, is attested by findings dating back to the Hellenistic and Roman period. During the 11th century, Kalampaka was known by the name Stagi. The name Kalampaka comes from the Turkish word Kalampak, which means beautiful fortress. The high rock named Agia is a landmark separating it from Kastraki, where a paved road leads to the monasteries. Kalampaka is a town characterized by its rich history and important monuments, the grandest of which is the Holy Church of the Assumption of the Virgin. This church is situated northeast of the town, at the base of a great rock called Agia. The Cathedral of the Assumption of the Virgin, a three-aisled basilica built in the time of the Emperor Justinian and rebuilt in 1309 by Andronicus Palaeologus, is well worth the visit. The church, located in the Old City, was erected on the ruins of an old Christian basilica church. The outer narthex was added in the 16th century. The southern wall is adorned with many ancient bas-reliefs depicting Christian symbolism. A unique and harmonious matching of Byzantine architecture and natural beauty, the monasteries of the Meteora were included among the monuments of World Cultural Heritage in 1988.